Alrighty guys, now on to section 7.2, which focuses on using the quadratic formula. But the thing about the quadratic formula is that we can't use it until we derive it. So we will start with deriving the quadratic formula. So we're going to start with the general equation ax squared plus bx plus c, which is equals to 0. So when I'm deriving the quadratic formula, essentially what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the steps for solving in a quadratic equation. So the steps right here. The only difference is that instead of concrete numbers, it's just going to be variables that represent numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do step 1, and I'm going to divide both sides by a, so I can make the leading coefficient 1. In order to do that, so I'm going to divide both sides by a. When I do that, keep in mind I have to divide every single term. So this is equal to ax squared over a plus bx over a plus c over a, and then 0 divided by a is 0. So when I do that, I get x squared, and then I'm going to do b over a x. So these two are the exact same, but I want the coefficient to be very clear, plus c over a, which is equal to 0. Now the second step is I want to isolate the variable terms on one side of the equation. So I'm going to subtract CA from both sides. When I subtract CA from both sides, this is what I get. Right. Now we want to complete the square. So over here, we still want the coefficient of the linear term, and that is b over a. I'm still going to divide it by 2, and I'm going to square it. When I divide this by 2, so essentially this is b over a, and then this is 2. So since it's dividing, this becomes 1/2. Right. So actually, let me take a step back. This is divided by 2, so these are the exact same as this. And then when you divide by 2, we're going to multiply by 1/2. Right. So then I get b over 2a quantity squared. So we can do like b squared over 4a squared. Actually, yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. So I did, so b over 2a times b over 2a, we get b squared over 4a squared. What am I going to do with this? I'm going to add it to both sides. So this is plus b squared over 4a squared plus b squared over 4a squared. Right. Now, we are going to factor the resulting perfect square trinomial. Yeah, we're just going to factor it. So this becomes x plus b over 2a quantity squared. So if we check our work, this is x times x, which is x squared. b over 2a times b over 2a is b squared over 4a squared. And then 2 times x times b over 2a. So 2 times x times b over 2a. 2's cancel. So then I am left with b over a x, which is the exact same as this. So we completed the square correctly. One thing I forgot to mention in the previous section is that this term right here, wherever you add, it should always be your b over 2. Right? And as you can see, when we do the BA over 2, we are left with b over 2a, which is right here. And then you can go to the previous videos, or for the section 2 video, and even the section 3, and you'll see that holds true. And then over here, this is negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. The only way I can add these is if I have a common denominator. So I'm going to erase this because I need more space. A different color. So if I have negative c over a and then b squared over 4a squared, to add them we need a common denominator. So what is the LCD? Our LCD would be 4a squared. Why? So if you look at it, look at all the factors. All the factors are 4 and a. 4 has a power of 1. The greatest power between these a's is 2. So our LCD is 4a squared. When I look over here, I'm going to ask, what do I need to multiply this fraction by so I can get my denominator to be 4a squared? And then your answer would be 4a. And then when I look over here to the side, actually, this is negative c over a. And then when I look over here, I already have a 4a squared, so we don't have to do anything with this fraction. Right? So then we get x plus b over 2a, quantity squared. This is going to equal negative 4ac plus b squared, and then 4a squared. Now we are going to apply the square root property. So this whole thing is equal to x plus b over 2a. This is equal to plus or minus the square root. Right. I have 4a squared. So remember that addition is commutative. So I can rearrange these terms, and I'm going to rearrange them as b squared minus 4ac. Right? So now we're going to subtract b over 2a, and we will get, or from both sides, and we will get negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. So, actually, sorry, let me take another step back. When I look at this, looking at this fraction, this fraction, so we're assuming that a, b, and c are all real numbers, or even when you take the root. So, we can use the division property, and so when we do that, this can be the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and then this is the square root of 4a squared. The square root of 4a squared is 2a, because 2a times 2a is 4a squared. So then we get negative b over 2a plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Since these two have a common denominator, we can add them together. So we have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And this is how you derive the quadratic formula. Now it's your turn. So for your homework, I want you to replicate this, all this work, and then I want you to turn it in by Friday at 11:59 p.m.